Uh, Thank you, Matthias, for coming. And you are one of the first person I shared the idea that I wanted to start a podcast, and you are very supportive of it. So you can introduce yourself a bit about your
Yes.
philosophical life.
Thank you very much for inviting me. That was very kind. And yes, of course, I'm supporting it because that's the future to do podcasts and long interviews. Um, yes, I did different things in my life, but probably we are here to talk about ideas, about reality, or prospects for the future, or about the past. So technically, I could say that I'm a philosopher, although I'm not working at the university. So I'm not a philosophy professor. I'm also not quoting a lot from books because I think it's boring, generally speaking. And so I'm just commenting
Can
and sharing
move a
my
mic a
thoughts.
bit to
Yes,
right.
and sharing my thoughts.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and
Okay.
doing a different kind of work, and that's how we found our ways to this little room.
Yes. Okay. So I will dive right in. How did you get into philosophy?
Yes. First, I have to say that I did not really plan my life, and I'm not sure that you can plan your life at any stage of it. How did I come to it? It was a mix. I'm interested in history. I'm interested in literature. Of course, I'm also observing the political world, what is happening around me in Europe and outside of Europe. And it's a good question, and it's not easy to ask. It it seemed to me something which gave me a lot personally because I thought if I understand the history of ideas, of thinking, of theories of Europe better, I know more about myself. Because knowledge, I believe or I feel, is always coupled with knowledge about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you are speaking about, I don't know, art or history or political theories or whatever, but it is your continent or your country, your language community in one or more countries, and in the end, it also tells you something about the past of your, let's say, city or country or whatever. It does not mean that you share all
Mm-hmm.
what happened or that you support everything that happened in the past, but it's important to know about it. And I think young people are aware of it in the United States and in Europe. And it can be politicized a little bit. It should not be too much politicized. It should also be an open discussion
Mm-hmm.
about something that happened in the past, like colonialism or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So yeah, like talking about nationality, you are a Swiss national,
yes, from
and
Switzerland. This is in Western Europe, not in Central Europe, not in Eastern Europe. And of course, when I grew up, there was still communism. I mean, the Russian variant of communism and all the states that depended
mm-hmm.
on the Russian variant of communism. I'm now speaking like that because it's, of course, communism is not linked to Russia. It is just a Western European concept, which can be European or Chinese or Russian or African or everything, you
Yeah.
know. Yes, but in the times of communism, times were quiet. There was not such stress and fear and panic. I never had that in my life. It's a new experience, this panicking about everything. So,
Yes.
climate and COVID and Russia and migration and whatever, Of course, everything was already there on the table and it was discussed. Some were against it, some were for it, or whatever. But this complete crazy panic and heat and hate and everything, I did not experience in the time when there was still the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something which makes me think, because I would never have expected that, because I thought, like many thought, that with the system change, a new era would start in the West and even on the planet, But actually it became worse. After 20, 30 years, it became worse. It would be much better now if we would still have the Soviet Union and USA from the 20th century. It would be very relaxed compared to today.
Compared to today.
Which is something very crazy to say. So, yes, but when I think back about the question you just asked, I have to say that it is rather disappointing what I'm answering you, because I never planned it. I never analyzed it really. And I need to find a better answer for you, because this is not satisfactory what I said. Of course, I have many interests. I'm curious. I like to speak to people, like to you. But that's not an answer,
I know, but it's okay. But let me ask you something about Switzerland then. Like, you're a Swiss national, and Switzerland is famous or infamous for being neutral throughout the history. And you are not a neutral person that I know. Like, you have your own idea, you are sticking to it. What made Switzerland neutral?
So the best person to ask would be a historian. But what I know, history is not so simple in any time and every place. Many factors go into history, and you never know in which direction history goes. What I said, the USA-Russia conflict is today much worse than it was during the Soviet Union. Of course, for Central Europe, for Eastern Europe, this is not an argument, but I'm not from there. I'm from Western Europe. So I have a different perspective on it. Yes, and the neutrality, how can I say it for our audience? So maybe the first thing to understand, it's a product of history. So it's not a plan. It was not a plan to make Switzerland. It was not a natural law that there should be a nation and that the nation looks like that and there are this kind of languages and this kind of ideas in this nature. There's no necessity. There's no natural law. It just happens. It's like blindly cooking something and the outcome is tasty or not. Yeah. That's how history works. So it's a little bit chaotic, and out of the chaos comes order. And the order can be nice or not nice, but that's not an argument in history. It's just what happens. So, for instance, to say I don't like colonialism does not mean that colonialism is not something that we should study and understand, for instance. But yes, coming back to your question. So it's a product of history. It was not planned. And it required the acceptance and the help of foreign powers. In the past, that was not the United States, because the United States did not exist, or they were very new as a state. So it was not the United States. Of course, it was not Asia. It was not something far away. It was not Africa. It was European powers. So there was a peace treaty in the 17th century that was one, let's say, paragraph in that historical chapter, where they said it is the best for all other countries if we keep Switzerland out of the war. But this has different reasons. And then, since we have the new movie about Napoleon, I can also add something else. There was the French Revolution, and we were living in the shadow of France. So it's a little bit like Soviet Union and Poland. So Poland was living in the shadow of the Soviet Union, and we were earlier living as a satellite of France. We were living in the shadow of France, and to take our modern terminology, it was a left-wing dictatorship. But of course, it's we should not use these terms so lightly. But I just want to make clear the nature of it, what it was. And then came Napoleon, who was a very talented, ruthless, but very talented politician and general. So he was extraordinary. So he was not a normal, everyday guy. That's why the things happened that happened because of him. Without him, it would not have gone so far. So that's, by the way, also something in history. It is chaotic, but it also needs such leaders that just turn the wheel around in one direction. So sometimes it needs the masses of the population, but it also needs the leaders. It does not mean that the leader is a good guy. It has nothing to do with what I like or what is good. It's just what is happening. Like today, just what is happening. That's the only thing that counts in the end, not if I like it or if my cousin understands it. It's not an argument. The argument is just what happens. Well, how can we describe it? Yes, and
But what do you identify as your national identity?
Swiss.
Swiss. Okay, and do you think national identity is very important?
Yeah, that's not a question concerning one country.
Yeah. The question is in general.
I'm just answering. One country or one continent. This is a general question about the concept of a nation. What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be a Frenchman? What does it mean to be a Turkish citizen? Whatever. And for Switzerland, it's the same. So yes, for me personally, it's important, but I have also to say that not everybody is the same in any country. Even in a small country, you have different people with different opinions. Some people are nice, some people are not nice. So I do not make any difference with, let's say, India or Japan or whatever. But for me personally, it's important, but not because of neutrality or whatever. Because of my family. Because my family, or the families, two families, father side and mother side, and you cannot choose where you are born. You cannot choose who is your father, who is your mother. And with your parents comes the entire baggage with cultural, language, religion, sometimes political opinions, career opportunities. Many things are connected with your family. And so what the most important thing is with my home city in Western Switzerland, it's my father, my mother, the memories I have. But of course, in a situation of war, it would be different because war and peace are different situations, different, and people change. And it is possible, I don't know, because there was never the test, and there was never the case in my life, that I would become maybe a little bit more nationalistic or whatever, more less open-minded in a case of war. But this is not because of my country. This is just a human existential situation.
So, do you think having a strong national identity or being very nationalistic can mend our character without being related with racism?
This is a very good question. And please let me introduce it with a general remark. I like very much that you ask me this question, but it's not that simple.
Yeah, take your time.
No, it's not that simple. It's not because your question is wrong. So it's not that I'm coming and explaining to you that your question is wrong. What happens sometimes, in podcasts, I don't know, I must invent a term for it. It is this knowing better, Something I absolutely hate. Even maybe it's possible that I know things better than you, but showing that knowing better and you please shut up.
Yes.
So it's not about that. The question is precise. The question is legitimate. First, I have to say something. Human beings are not computers. Human beings are not angels. Human beings are not devils. Human beings are very complicated. And then if you ask something about how human beings behave now in the context of nationalism, it's also very complicated. So the cheap answer would be, oh, it's an individual thing. Maybe you will be a nice nationalist and I will be a bad nationalist. That's a cheap answer, but it's true. I mean, it's a little bit not very interesting. Of course, it's true in every situation, in peace, in war, in dictatorship, in democracy. You can have very lovely people and very antipathic people you just want to avoid from your own people, sometimes from your own family.
Yeah.
And these questions make me think a lot lately, because when I was younger, the world was very easy compared to today. So there was just a very powerful USA, a very powerful communist Russia. China was not so powerful and anyway too far away. India was associated with drugs and gurus and yoga. So a little bit stupid, a very stupid.
Can also be a European point of view.
Yes. Yeah. So, but as not important. You just go there for fun, but not important.
Yeah, I understand. In the political spectrum.
And in China, China was like something big and probably very interesting, but it was too far away and nobody really cared about China. And Japan was popular because they were the friends of the West. But life was very easy. And then for me, it was also very easy. I said, I hate nationalists, I hate Nazis, I hate everything. I don't want to hear from them, but I also was not confronted with it. But for me, it was very clear. If I have to choose between the Nazis and the Russian communists, I'm running to Russia. I become a Russian communist yesterday. If that's the alternative, I still say that. So if you would force me with a pistol, you have to subscribe to a Nazi ideology or to a communist ideology, I will still run to the communists because I have it's just too negative for me, the ideology. But of course, dictatorship is dictatorship. In the end, maybe the result is similar. But if that would be the alternative, I always thought like that. But I'm not a communist. But if that would be, for some strange reason now, the
mandate to leave.
Yes. Let's imagine just we are on a planet and half of the planet is fascist. like the Italians, the Spanish, the Germans, the Croatians, the South American fascists are really things I cannot stand. And the other half of the planet is a communist. Okay, forget it. Then I become a communist. If this is, but this was a real. This was a real situation in the 20th century. You could not, for instance, in the Second World War, you could not simply say, "Oh, I'm now here and I'm neutral. I do not participate in the fighting." What can you do if your village is attacked or your city? You cannot simply say, "Oh, I'm not interested in politics." Everybody becomes interested in politics because you are confronted with the war. But as I said, in my case, it's not like that. It was a very stable younger years and nothing like today. So for younger people than me, it is much more confusing and much more fearsome reality than I ever had.
But it's very interesting for me, like when I read about the World War II and early 1920s to the end of Second World War, I would imagine that was the worst period in modern history.
Yes.
And a few days ago,
Yes.
you told me the same thing. For
Yes.
you never felt this much danger in the atmosphere,
Yes.
or people going crazy over things.
Yes, because I could make a footnote which is a little bit more philosophical, but maybe this I will leave it for later. I need to answer your question. How do I feel about identifying with a nation, about being a nationalist, about racism? Genetically, I feel very bad about it. But I have to process it in my brain. I cannot simply be a bag full of emotions. And it's completely against my ideal. I don't like emotional people. So positive or negative emotions, you have to have self-control. So I have to process it in my head, even though I'm certainly not a fan of South American dictators or whatever in the 20th century when I was a student. But I have to process it because we are all one species, so we are just human beings. And we are biologically almost the same. If you compare to birds, for instance, in birds, I just take birds as an example. You have many species and subspecies and differentiation. And in the history, in the very old history of humanity, which is studied in biological anthropology, it just happened that in the end, when our distant ancestors were already outside of Africa, they were going very fast to the east in Asia, very fast in Europe, and from Asia to the American continent, they were very, very fast. Why were they so fast? Historically, because there was no resistance, there were no people. When there are only the animals, only the climate, you can go very fast. That's why in the last 10 to 20 years, archaeologists and historians it was the archaeologists mostly, because there were no books,
Yeah.
They were very surprised how fast the Homo genus, so the genus, this is the bigger category, and the species is the qualification of the bigger category. So the different species of Homo erectus, for instance, who invented the fire, how fast they reached Eastern Asia. Nobody knew that. And then from north, Eastern Asia, over the land bridge to Alaska, and then right down to Patagonia and on the southern tip of South America. So in the older models in the last century, they had assumptions based on what they knew from findings, which were much longer in time. But then the time became ever shorter because they found new objects in the earth or rests of settlements. And now we know that our species expanded very, very quickly because we are so super flexible. And in little communities, of course, you have to imagine the entire village is on the move. So it's not one man. So it's not a one or two man hunting for animals. It's an entire village or a little town that is on the move. But there is nobody. That's why they could, animals, forests, rains and illnesses and hunger. Of course, they lost many people because they didn't have enough food or they didn't know what to eat. They lost many people, but they were not in conflict with people who were already there. So that's something very important to understand, which of course probably will not be explained in any university. Because in later times, in historical times, when we have books and documents, it is exactly the opposite. People arrive where people are and take their land away. But in the prehistoric time, it was not like that. So this religious symbol that God created the earth or the planet and gave it to the man is true. But it's a symbolical language. But it does not mean, of course, that you should destroy the planet. I'm not saying that. So what should I say about nationalism? Let's say like this. Personally, I have bad feelings about it, but not because of the Germans or because of the Japanese, or generally because it's not me. It's not me. My roots are my family, my parents, and this happens to be in Switzerland. It could also be in Kerala, you know. So it would be the same argument, you know.
Yeah.
But intellectually, by thinking of it, I have to think that we are one species. We are all very, very similar. I have to accept that other people are different than me. I have to accept that there is a lot of negativity in the human race, generally speaking, which is just there and which may serve some biological function, which may be good for fighting or for survival or for taking resources. And I have to accept that. I cannot just sit here like a little prince or a little king or a little god and say, oh, I'm such a good person and they are so bad. And so what do I do now after what happened in the last 20, 30 years since the communist system was replaced with a post-communist system? I accepted that there are racists. I accepted that there are very fanatical people who want to take control of entire continents. I accepted that there's religious fanaticism. It may be for different reasons. Maybe there are reasons that are valid. I just have to accept it, because what can I do? Can I go outside my little room or this little room and start to put people in prison or to kill them or whatever? I have to make peace because we are the same. You know, we are the same people. Because there is only one species and we are not even a species, we are the same subspecies. So our full name is not even Homo sapiens. Our full name is Homo sapiens sapiens. We are even a subspecies, and all the other species has died out. The last concurrent species was the Neanderthals, who also came from Africa, and there was the Ice Age, but they were probably, nobody knows, they were physically destroyed by our ancestors, and the women that remained mixed with our men. And so from the two last lines of our ancestry, one line was eliminated by us. And then to India, to Asia, from Asia to the American continent. So we are all the same. So that's the best argument against racism. But still, racism is a reality. You cannot talk it out of the world with biology. But still, we are one family with different skin colors, which is absolutely no problem. So I have to find peace with the fact that people are completely different from me. And that they think that I'm a complete idiot, and I think that they are really negative, stupid people. But I cannot play a little God. So that's why I distance myself, and I say, okay, in France we have this, in this country we have this, in this country we have this. And I try to stay cool and not to condemn people. I just distance myself from them. But of course, if such a person who would have wildly different feelings and thoughts than I have would try to get into a honest debate with me, I would accept it. But if somebody would just try to attack me or to destroy my life, of course not. So on the emotional side, no. On the rational side, I don't have the choice. I have to accept that people are radically different from me or from people like me. And it's not a...
It's a sad reality.
It's a sad reality, and so I'm not, honestly, I'm not depressed because of it, because I'm very happy with my own opinions, but it's realism. You have to be realistic, and you have to be, to some extent, humanistic. You don't need to love everybody. That's too much. I cannot love everybody. I love almost nobody. But you have to be aware, even if you think that's my enemy, ideological, or in the business world, or in a war, he is still genetically or biologically or from the distant history, from the same family, very close to me. Of course, a racist or a super nationalist can never admit that. But that's not the problem. I already know they cannot admit it. But what do I do with it, you know? And so also in the last years, it changed because without going into details, that was a learning process only maybe in the last 5 years that I really thought I have to be very, very rational about it, very cool, without negative emotions, and just accept what the reality is. I cannot change it. But when I was... let's say between before and after the year 2000, let's say like this, such thoughts were absolutely no, it would have been crazy to think about something like this, because the idea was that communism is past and fascism is past. And racism and migration and economical problems are just little disturbances.
Okay.
But now it looks different, and that's why I had to return within myself, for myself, to this communism, fascism dichotomy, which I thought was completely dead and buried, but it's not true. It came back, but in a different form, in a more modern and less, also less aggressive form, you know. So it is more subtle, it is more sophisticated.
Okay.
So in the 20th century,
But
it was
talking
not like
about
this.
communism, fascism, we overcame the, let's believe the worst of it. And there was a big emphasis on democracy. And do you believe we are at a stage now where that is kind of breaking? The system of democracy is not working as intended to work?
Yes, maybe I can take this question and the other question concerning nationalism together. Let me now write or say the footnote I was alluding to for both questions, for nationalism and democracy. There was probably mainly from German philosophers, but we have to be very careful because of you know
It has to be the right German philosopher.
not because of that, because of Eurocentrism.
Mm-hmm.
Europeans, I'm not even speaking about Americans or Australians now, let's just speak about the source of these people, which is Europe mostly, those who hold the power. So in Australia, in USA, in Canada, New Zealand. So we don't need to talk about all these countries. It's enough to talk about Europe, and then it will be valid also for the Europeans who went
Yeah,
abroad.
yeah.
And Europeans always have the impression that they are the first, that they invented everything, and that they are the most beautiful and just the best people in the universe, which is also something I completely hate. So I'm a European, so I completely despise this standard narrative or worldview that you have this tiny little peninsula called Europe, and this is the center of the planet, and reinforced through the colonies. So first the British Empire, and then what we can call the American Empire, but which is, of course, of a different kind, which is not exactly a copy of the British Empire, but it's also in a certain way, it's also an empire, but it works differently. Yes, so that's why I have to be very careful. The German philosopher, maybe the idea comes from Japan, or from Central Africa. But of course, a European does not care if something is not coming from France, England, or Germany. So, but let's assume that I'm not so completely wrong, that it does not come from China, and then maybe it comes from German history, philosophy of history. And the idea was 100 years ago, or maybe even longer back, that you have an individual life cycle and you have the life cycle of a nation or of a culture or of a civilization. Doesn't matter. And you look at a nation, let's say France or whatever, France, Italy, as a big person with a childhood, with maturity, with age, and with death. And this is a thought which seemed to be a little bit too simple because it's an analogy. So it's not a very precise comparison. It is a hazy comparison, but this is called an analogy. But this was important in the past when scientists and philosophers did not have exact research methods, and the mathematics was also not good, and then you had to guess the nature of reality by analogy. For instance, wine is similar to water. Maybe there are similar chemical things in it.
Okay.
Because you did not have a lab, So you just observed it and then say, oh, maybe there is water in wine or whatever. So that's just...
But coming back to democracy.
Yes, and with democracy and nationalism. And this is this thought that there's a life cycle, So there's a high time and a low time, and then there's something new starting. And for me, it was also too simple, but of course, in a way, it's true. But this idea is coming back. Is coming back in the West.
Which idea?
That a nation or a civilization which is called in the West, which also I do not support to speak like that, it is called Judeo-Christian civilization.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something very problematic for 2 or 3 reasons. But let's say culture. I will now use the word Western culture, not Judeo-Christian civilization. And I can also tell you why this is a wrong way of speaking. This, like Douglas Murray and Neil Ferguson and Jordan Peterson. This is completely, this is just bonkers. But that's just the way they speak to try to save this Eurocentric, Western-centric worldview. But you cannot save it by just using this label, which you have to criticize, reflect upon. Yes, so with democracy, with nationalism, I think probably if we follow this life cycle from childhood to age and then it disappears, of nations, of continents, of cultures, I think that the bad functioning of our democracies, the low credibility, the low enthusiasm, the importance of money in it, that you have to invest a lot of money, the importance of media, plus the rise of nationalism, of trying to go back somewhere in the past and tell the world we are still the best, we are still the most beautiful, and you have to become like us. This neo-colonialist attitude, which is now also a fact, which can be felt. Maybe it is not expressed so specifically, but it can be felt if we speak about certain political problems. It seems to indicate that Western civilization, which came from Europe, not from the United States, not from Australia, from Europe, is in decline.
Mm-hmm.
And then the answer would be more negativity, less openness, less interest in learning something or in changing something. And then the question is, how far down will it go?
Yeah.
Then, of course, there are different people.
Also, there's a question: what's next after the downfall of the
and
so-called?
So I'm very pessimistic, but not everybody needs to be pessimistic. And I'm not pessimistic because I cannot accept the negativity and the stupidity of people. I completely accept that many people are negative and stupid. It's not that I do not accept it. I have no power to change that. And I'm also not even sad because, in this worldview that you have something that is going up and is going down again, like the sun, there's also a justice in it. Why should, for instance, one part of the world always be in charge? Mm-hmm. It's completely unfair because it would never give a chance to another part of the world. Why should Africa be underprivileged continent for the next 3,000 years? Where is justice in that? That's maybe interesting for France or for England or for the United States or, I don't know, for some...
China as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's no justice, so there must be death. So it is true that on a little bit a more abstract level, I'm a pessimist, but I'm not a pessimist, an immediate pessimist. I'm not a negative person, but on a more elevated level, I'm a pessimist because I think that I know that human beings are incorrigible, that they are just trying to find an excuse to do the next terrible thing. It doesn't matter if you go back to the 20th century or you just invent something new to grab the resources of a place, for instance, saving the planet or whatever. You can invent nice little stories, but it's always about that. And yes, so the answer would be we are in decline in the West. I have to speak about the region where I come from. I'm not God. I cannot speak about the entire universe. But it is certainly the case that we are in decline, and two symptoms of this pathology are this nationalism, racism thing, and the dysfunction or the brokenness or the corruption of our democratic systems.
Yeah, I would agree to that. Like people look at US and think that's the most free country, the country that provides freedom to their people. They can do whatever they want and rights for everything. And then you see this two-party system and two old people standing on a stage
Yes,
and
yes.
acting like a bickering children. And what is free in that? What choice do the people have to make between two old people to lead their country and hence lead the world?
I also have to say something maybe to some viewers who now think that I will just repeat what others and famous people say in podcasts. And, for me, for instance, now in our conversation, it would be very easy that I just take the arguments of Douglas Murray, which I cannot stand. I just want to crawl beneath the table when I only see the first letter of his name, or Jordan Peterson or whatever. I share many details, but the overall attitude I completely reject, because it's Eurocentrism. It's the supremacy of the white people. It doesn't matter if you say we are the best people because we are Christians, because you never mean, if you say that, you never mean Palestinian Christians. You never mean black African Christians. Who is interested in Palestinians? It's always about these beautiful European people with the best brain and everything. Yes, the best brain who stole from other cultures like India, from Muslims, and from, of course, from their own past too. So there is Greek philosophy, there is Roman law, there is the European version of Christianity, which is not a European religion, not a Western religion. Everything exists, but it was a symbiosis with what came from outside Europe. It was not simply that the Europeans were in the forest and watching the stars and suddenly they invented mathematics, But this is the tendency in this podcast that they say they are conservatives. I would also say I'm a conservative, but certainly not of the same brand as they are, because I'm completely against this closure and this we are the best and they are only parasites and they have to become like us, and they were really happy to be part of the British Empire, these stupid Indians, which is absolutely alive. So not in my country, because we were not in the British Empire, but many Westerners think like that.
Yes, of course, especially the countries that hit colonization. I think in the Middle East also, the fall
Yes,
of
or North Africa.
yes, they say when they come to colonize, they say they bring civilization, but
Yes.
sadly, civilization doesn't feed you, and people die because of hunger and what they steal from the country.
If I can say something, what is disappointing, I'm not sad, I'm not depressed, I'm just saying. What is disappointing, the American Republic or Canada or whatever is still young. So it would have been, so if I would be God and I would just plan history, I would give to the British Empire roughly 500 years, and then I would give to the American Empire roughly 500 years, and then I would give to the Russians 500. That's how I would plan it as a god. But it's really disappointing that the USA is already collapsing after less than 300 years.
But do you think there's a revival for them? For USA, like they are going on a downfall, yes, but is there a chance they can get back on hand? Maybe a new young
Nobody knows
president.
that. Nobody knows what will happen in India in 100 years. Nobody really knows what will happen in any place. Intuitively, from my gut and feeling, I say, no, it's over. It's over. I can also explain why, but not everything at the same time. But I think it's over. But a comeback is possible after 500 years or so.
Of course.
In the long run, it's possible. So the USA, maybe in the future, together with Canada, let's say North America, if we speak about the future, will always be an important player on the planet. It's not necessary for them to be number one, to be an important player. But I will now not continue to speak, because maybe you will give me the occasion to come back to it and explain further what I mean. So I'm on a higher level pessimistic, but nobody should be sad because of that. I think it's over because, let's say, 200 to 300 years is too short a period. So if you have a decline already after 200-300 years, something is wrong. So it's a serious pathology. It's like your body is seriously ill and you are dying at the age of 43.
But what made them go down so fast? Do you think it's Biden has to play a part?
No.
Trump has to play a part.
No.
Their foreign policies.
This is exactly what many podcasts and the established media want people to believe, because it's a distraction. No, it's a different thing. It's a very serious problem, and so the left-wing people, the communists, the neo-communists, they blame the capitalist system, and this is not wrong. And as my father also said, who was a liberal Catholic, the communists and the Marxists, they had the right criticism, but they did not have the right remedy. And I say exactly the same as my father, who was a liberal Catholic. He was not a communist. So the criticism is correct. You can, of course, turn it a little bit around and use this kind of arguments and this kind of... But capitalism is a problem. And for instance, in Switzerland, which is a rich country, also a capitalist country, democracy was more a topic than in other countries, because we were not involved in the war, and we did not have destroyed cities. And of course, if you can avoid a war, like Turkey was not in the war, Switzerland was not in the war, Spain was not in the war, in the Second World War, then it's of course better for the country, because war is the last resort, it's the last method to settle something. But it would be better not use this method. But it's a method. It was always a method for states and tribes to resort to violence if everything else fails. Yes, and since the democracy topic was more deeper, or not deeper, it was more natural in my country to discuss it, the awareness that the money is distorting the decision-making process is very old. It is at least 30, 40 years old in Switzerland, but there's absolutely no good solution to it. But for instance, the newspaper that my father had in paper format, I read articles on it where serious journalists discussed it. Does money completely distort and corrupt the democratic process? And the answer is yes. It was also the answer of the writer of the article. But the problem is, like communism, you can spot the conflict and the problem and have a good grasp of it, but you are far away from any solution that would be acceptable. And so, as a higher level pessimist, it is good to say, okay, if we do not have a much better solution, then let's continue with corruption and with distortion, because it's better than nothing. It's better than lose all the rights. So yes, and that's now the case in a big on a big scale in the West. So manipulation through the internet, one-sided selection of headlines and articles on Google. The millions and millions and millions of euros and dollars are necessary even to start a campaign, which is not good. This means that normal working people have no chance. So you have to be connected to big money, and then big money selects or pre-selects the candidates through the money, which is very crude. And then the candidates are there, but it's not a grassroots, let's say, movement. The most grassroots politics are the populists. So the most successful populists in the USA were Bernie Sanders on the left side,
Yes.
and Donald Trump on the right side, who was an ex-Democrat. The entire family was Democrat in the past.
Trump?
Yeah, the Trump family, of
Really?
course. Yeah, that this centrist business people, Democrats. But then the entire spectrum moved to the left. And then it happened, what happened to Elon Musk, that suddenly they are always, or Jimmy Dore, or whatever, they are always around the same place in their political opinions, but the entire spectrum went to the left. And then suddenly they are on the right side. But Jimmy Dore, for instance, or Elon Musk, or even the Trump family, they would not be so much on the right side if the entire spectrum would be more balanced, like in the last century. So they became right-wingers. But in my case, it's exactly the same. I also did not change my opinions so much. So in the last century, I was more on the left side, and I still have the same opinions. But because everything went so far to the left with woke culture, I'm suddenly on the right. So for me, this is easy to understand. So it's not that I was like something and then suddenly I completely changed my opinions. That's not in my character to completely change my opinions. But if you stay in the right place, not in the right place, in the same place, and the world around changes, and suddenly you are perceived as a different person. And of course, I'm not comfortable with nationalism and big money and big business and taking the resources from India, like in the 19th century, or taking the resources from Africa or whatever. So I'm not a conservative in this way. I'm just a conservative because it happens that I did not change my opinions, but the entire political world moved.
Yeah, I think it happened to many people.
Yes, and to me
Like-
too. So that's why I call myself a new conservative, not because I'm new, not because I have a new invention. I could also say a passive conservative, but it would a little bit be odd. Why is he a passive conservative? So I'm new in the sense of I think democracy is good, even if it is corrupt. We can live with corruption. We can also live with lies, if the lies are not too many.
And too hurtful.
And too hurtful.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But as I said, on a higher level, I'm pessimistic. I think it's over. The game is over, and there's a change in. There's a new chapter in history that opens. And as I said, the very disappointing thing from the Western perspective is that this dominance, this hegemony from the United States could not last longer. So for me, it's not a problem. I don't want to have the Americans for 500 years. But I'm just saying, generally, for the Western perspective, this is very, very disappointing. At least you should have 500 years before you go down the drain. But that's not the case. And then the negativity against other cultures, other religions, other ideologies or people like me can be understood, because you can then say, oh, it's a reaction out of total frustration. So, for instance, if I see Douglas Murray, which I cannot stand, I cannot repeat it enough. So people cannot stand
You already
Jordan
said
Peterson.
it like 3 times.
No, I cannot stand him. He's an Islamophobe. I completely hate Islamophobes. You know, that's also something I learned in the last 5-10 years. You know, in the medicine or in the history of medicine, you have allopathic treatment and
Homeopathic treatment, yeah.
Yes, and of course, if you are a good Christian, let's say a honest Catholic or whatever, you say, oh, you have to always apply allopathic therapy. This means if somebody is aggressing you, you give him a kiss. You know? If somebody wants to steal your money, you give him his house, your house, whatever. Of course, that's not really what the religion wanted to tell people, but this is just a very naive interpretation, and most Western people think that Christianity is like this, just to not do anything and not be politically active, never do any war and so, but that's not really the religion. But that's how people view the rest of Christianity that still is believed in the West.
And now,
And I learned that sometimes you have to be homeopathic. So if somebody gives you hate, you have to give hate back. So if, let's say, I know I don't have this, of course, with white skin, but let's say I can understand it. If I would feel that I'm living in a, let's say, Swiss community in Kerala, and the Kerala people would say that my skin is very ugly, that I come from a very stupid country where there are only stones and mountains, and that all these people like me can go
back
to Sri Lanka, whatever, you know. But I do not experience that. But let's say we would live in an inverse world. Then I think I would hate people who hate me. This is not Christian. This is not. There's also not really Muslim or Jewish from the religion side of it. So you can have different opinions. But I think this would be a homeopathic method. And so maybe I can say I hate racism, or not racism, I hate racists. But I also do not hate them in a destructive way. You know, it's not that I want to go there and break their bones. It's not like that. But on a higher level, like I'm on a higher level pessimist, I can also hate, but on a higher, more abstract level, not on the direct face-to-face level. Except you punch me in the face, then maybe it will be a direct
which makes sense.
Flow of hate energy, you know. But this, yes. So you have the right to be aggressive, to hate, because it's not fair if somebody just can express hatred towards you, and you cannot even return the hatred, because then you are perceived as a bad person. But of course,
Let's me go to the next question.
Yes, please.
Like we can fit everything in the time
Yes.
we have. Let's keep West aside
Yes,
and let's talk about the East.
yes,
You often say you are a friend of East.
yes.
Uh, and why is that? And what do you think the East is doing right now?
Ah, so generally, I think that if our life cycle is coming to an end in the next, let's say, until the end of this century, then the next life cycle and career and success story will be Asia.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I believe. Maybe after 500 years, Asia, the West comes back, or maybe Africa is coming to a new form of consciousness or whatever, independence. But let's say if I would be God, I would have given to the West 500 years, and then I would now give 500 years to
Yeah,
Asia, but to the continent, not
certain countries.
not to Chinese people. But
Mm-hmm.
China is very important. But it's the Asian continent, so it's more or less what we define as geographical Asia. But it can also could also involve a part of Europe. Why not? It depends what will happen in the for instance, Eastern Europe or Central Europe. Even it depends on the conflicts that will show themselves. So no, it's not because of the future, or I think that the Asian continent will bring some incredible magic, fantastic innovation. It's not about that. It's just I have the impression. So I have warm feelings about other cultures because other cultures are on the same planet as I'm walking, even if many Westerners cannot understand this argument, but we are the same race, we are the same inhabitants of continents, we are on the same planet. So I do not see them as enemies or as threats or as stupid or as lazy. So I'm not a typical European. So I don't want to say that I'm a better person because that would also be a mistake. I
Yeah.
can also not say you should not talk like that and then I'm talking like that. But of course, not all Muslims. You have many Muslims in Africa. But Indonesia,
Mm-hmm.
there are many Muslims. So this is Southeastern Asia.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that you are very much interested in India as well.
Yes,
And I know you went to India last time. So
yes.
tell me, what was your preconceived notions before visiting India? You can be open. And what changed after you visited and came back, and what surprised you the most?
Honestly, nothing negative, but I heard enough negative things about India, not Pakistan, India, in the past. It was always the same, it's not very pleasant. It's very stupid comments about India, um, dirty,
Mm-hmm.
chaotic, terrible society, whatever, But I never thought like that because I'm very much aware that Indians are very close to Europeans culturally.
Especially Eastern Europeans, I think, cultural wise, because of religion.
Yes, yes, but of course, then out of Europe went the people to America and Australia. But as I said, it's enough to just take Europe and all the European colonies go with it. With
Mm-hmm.
it, yes, because there is a band or not a band, a nexus, a group of links linguistically from the religious point of view and the history of science and philosophy is if you don't know how to define philosophy, you can say it's an aspect of the history of science. Of course, today they do not say it like that, but
But
philosophy
what
is.
surprised you the most about
Yes,
India?
so I was not really surprised by anything. So what I knew was from articles or from documentaries. Was not impressed with these standard negative comments about India, because I don't take very seriously what Western people say. They say a lot of rubbish,
Mm-hmm.
like Douglas Murray. Uh, and I was not surprised. I felt at home very quickly. I mean, not really at home, but it was not a completely strange place
Mm-hmm.
for me. I visited the family of a colleague younger than me in the state of Gujarat with my girlfriend. What personally I saw Mumbai. I saw two cities in Gujarat, and at the end we were in the state of Goa.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, because of my work situation, we didn't make it for Kerala, because that was really the plan.
Yeah.
But that would have been a run and running back and going back quickly to Europe. So
Yeah,
we
but you will and you
yes,
should visit
yes,
Kerala.
directly,
Yeah, directly, exactly.
directly. Yes, and so we were with that family, and it is very strange. You know, normally, let's say I come from a so-called rich, privileged country. My family was also not a poor family, not very rich, but also not poor. So on the global scale, I was certainly always a privileged person. So normally you should expect that I would go there and.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, just like 5 minutes space.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 4.
Okay.
And people were very friendly. Of course, there are more people. You can observe it in the streets or, with the cars, but I never felt threatened. Um, I, those people I met were mostly, if we speak about nations or about more defined identity, people from Gujarat, people from Goa,
Mm-hmm.
people from Kashmir,
Mm-hmm.
whom I met in shops and restaurants in Mumbai and in Goa, and Nepalese.
Okay.
And that were my, face-to-face interactions. And I really felt well, but it is very difficult to say why or why not. Of course, I was a guest and I was treated well, but I'm not speaking about me being a guest. Just, I don't know. What I felt is that them and me are not very different.
Mm-hmm.
Although theoretically, historically, I would be, let's say, a Catholic, and they were Hindus. Most of them, and the Kashmiris, were Muslims. But of course, this is not important. It was not about that. But let's say I'm a European, there are Indians. So you would expect that there's a huge contrast, and it was not the case. And it was, of course, also easy because I did not have any issues with the temperature or with the food or whatever. And it's also very funny, European languages, most European languages belong to the Indo-European language group. And if they spoke Gujarati, so no, not standard Hindi, Gujarati. And I knew what my friend was talking about. Maybe sometimes there was an English word in it or a number or whatever. And then I said, yeah, I could guess what you were talking about. Also, the sound of these Indian languages it goes quite fast sometimes, but it is not so completely strange in my ear. So it is a foreign language, but I could not say that it is very strangely sounding, even or if I saw a Bollywood movie in the original language, I did not watch the entire movie, but it can happen that I'm watching 30 minutes or more than 30 minutes. it strikes me that, yeah, this is of course I do not understand what it is, but somehow it sounds a little bit familiar to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Arabic not, Hebrew or maybe Chinese does not sound familiar to the languages of Europe, I know. And this is because of this Indo-European connection, which goes back many centuries, which is the diffusion of the culture, but it's not migration. It's not that the people came. It is that, simply speaking, the knowledge came out of India and was transported and transformed. And that not only out of India, of course, but to make it very simple, I will now say out of India.
Okay.
In the end, we are still the best.
Yeah.
So this is under the table, you know. And Judeo-Christian civilization, this is completely wrong. These people use it to exclude Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why...
Maybe can you tell me more about it? Because I have read something. I know it started after World War II.
And then the problem is also the reason to be, in French, raison d'être, the reason to be of Islam is historically, but it is also a religious reason, because there is a complete contradiction between the Jewish religion and between the Jewish religion and the Christian religion. That's why they were always in conflict. And Islam came exactly in the middle of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they took from both sides. Islam is the synthesis of this contradiction. But a guy like Douglas Murray is not able to think like that because he's full of hate. But they try to rationalize their racism. It is, I'm an atheist. I'm a humanist. That's why we have to bomb Iraq, you know? That's the new atheists 20 years ago. I also hate them completely because of that. It is only one new form of racism, you know?
Yes, I think it's the Islamophobia is the only form of bigotry which is socially acceptable now, because you cannot say
with more important people like politicians and businessmen and people like
anywhere over in social media itself. Like you see some videos, and when you check the comments or tweets, you can see a lot of hate. And it's called cancer.
It makes me sick sometimes. Not so many, but 2 or 3 times I even participated and said that's not true what you are saying.
Yeah.
For instance, this saying idiotic things about the Quran and completely ignoring what is written in the Bible. And I was not blocked for that. It was very nice of Elon Musk. He did not block me for that.
But you know, Elon Musk, he is a flag bearer of free speech. Earlier today, we spoke about him a bit. Like one of your tweet was taken down, or your account was blocked, if I'm not...
Because of a little comment.
Okay.
Not a tweet, a little comment.
But I think free speech, what he presents himself as a warrior of free speech, is strictly to US. Because there was a BBC documentary based on the Gujarat conflict. I think you know about it a bit. Modi was involved. It was bloody. So there was a documentary made about it, and it was instantly blocked.
Yeah, because of the Indian government also.
Yes, everywhere in India, and it was in X platform as well, formerly Twitter. It was taken down from there as well.
I tell you quickly something. We are not losing a lot of time. What we had, the state of the West and democracy and everything is declining, and what does it mean to be an American and whatever, you know? That's this argument declining. And then if you would ask what is the most impressive political figure, I would answer you Kennedy, because Kennedy was the last wall to defend American democracy. Because after Kennedy, the Secret Services and even Tucker Carlson and now things like that. But the film director Oliver Stone, who made the movie JFK.
Yes, and also Tucker Carlson was the first person to blame CIA on camera
Yes,
for Kennedy
but
assassination.
Oliver Stone already was very near. And then that's the disadvantage of the American system compared to the Russian system. In the Russian system, and this was demonstrated 2 years ago, the boss of the secret services is terrorized by Putin. And that's the right thing. The president has to be, whatever, the government has to be above the secret services. But in the United States, it became like this as an effect of the post-war situation with conflict with Soviet Union and corruption.
And also, I think after 9/11, it became even worse.
Yes. They revamped it. And that's why I would say, because I had to think about it, I would say Kennedy, not because he was killed, but he was a nice man. He was the best that Europe could export to any place in the world. The entire family was nice, and they wanted peace. And they wanted to stay in control. And there is even a quotation by Kennedy, "I have no power over the secret services," when he was president. And Trump knows it, everybody knows it. But so it's not about Trump or Biden. The problem is democracy in the US and in extension in the West is fake, because the rich people and the secret services and maybe the banks or whatever run the show.
Yeah.
And the tightrope, the thin line is it has to appear to be a democracy, like this Biden-Trump debate, but in the background, the back state or the deep state or the overstate has to stay in control, and they are mainly in control through the money. And if it's necessary, they kill somebody or they start a new war or whatever. But mainly they do it with money. And that's the reason. And Europe is only an extension of USA since the collapse after the Second World War.
Yeah.
But before it was not like that. You had the British Empire, and then you had a real Europe, and then you had the communist bloc, which was of course something different, in the shadow of the Soviet Union. But you could not say that France was fake or whatever. It was not fake, but it became.
Yeah, I had a question written for you. Who is a leader that you are inspired by? Or
And then I would say Kennedy.
Okay.
And because of this. And then this would circle back to the question, why do you think that democracies are fucked up? But on a wider level, I think what is more important is not corruption and crime and wars. It's not possible to compete globally if you are a democracy. You have to be an intelligent dictatorship like Russia, like China. And that's why the transformation of India into such a, let's say, intelligent dictatorship is in the interest of India, but it is not in the interest, of course, of many Indian people, Hindus or Muslims. But you cannot have everything. You cannot have happy people and a powerful country. It's just not possible. Either you have a powerful country and people are medium happy, or you have happy, crazy people who are doing sex with the cat and with the dog, and then the country has absolutely no significance. And that's the choice the Russians do, the Chinese, which is not communism, and which India seems to also do. They want to be an important country. And so both, you cannot have both. You cannot have
agree,
both.
And I
would be too much of good to have.
Yes.
Yes, and for Switzerland, it's not a problem because it's so small.
Yeah.
So,
as much as I I entertain the idea of India becoming a superpower, and like you said, with these aspects, But there's lots of suffering involved for the minority of India. Doesn't matter which religion, but in general.
But it's suffering is involved in form of poverty. I mean, generally speaking, I'm not speaking about India. Minorities, yes. The state becomes too powerful. It's a modern dictatorship, so they can make you disappear.
Exactly.
But this tendency is here in Germany, in England, in America. So they if I would, I mean, I'm not an American, but if I would be very unhappy in an unhappy situation, I would, for instance, say, kill yourself, Hillary Clinton. They can put me 10 years in prison in the US, even though nobody would take it seriously. What I mean. Even if I mean it seriously, if I do something like this against a Democrat, theoretically, if I have enough followers, they put me in prison. And now they try to do the same in Germany, in England.
England, yeah.
France is very conflicted, so there the process is slower. But this is also an indication that the countries are not run by the elected people, if they are really elected.
Yeah, it's also very evident after the debate. That's one thing I understood. Like people are saying Biden is not fit for the future, and I was thinking Biden was not fit for where he is now, and it's very evident that he's not the one who's leading the country. There's many hands, many lobbies, many organizations involved.
You see, Bernie Sanders is a populist, and Donald Trump, but you have populists everywhere. And Sanders, they could stop within the Democratic Party. That was one reason that why Wikipedia became such an enemy of the Clintons, and so because some emails from the Clinton showed how they torpedoed Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders was the candidate, and he would maybe have won against Trump, or it would have been very close. So they stopped him. But in the Republican Party, the Republicans also tried to stop Trump. But Trump was such an icon, such a like Mickey Mouse and the Joker, that he became a magnet of attention. And then too many people became interested, even internationally, in the entire Trump saga, and they could not stop him in the party. But normally, the plan was to do exactly the same, some machination, and for some reason, Trump cannot be the candidate. But it did not work, because they did not have good other candidates, and he was already a famous person.
Yeah.
So that was against the plan, and then they rigged the election. He won the last election by really a record, and now they will rig the next election, or they will kill him. But I don't think they will kill him, because now with all that, what we know about Kennedy, everybody will ask, is it the Secret Service?
But talking about Kennedy, do you think the name Kennedy is why Robert Kennedy is not the Democrat candidate?
That's a good question. No, I think because what happened, Kennedy is now also practically on the right side of the spectrum. Not because
I would say
he
he's
did
a
anything.
centrist. I would say he's a centrist, but like you said, the
with
left
Israel
went...
is very much right.
No, yeah.
He's
But with Israel, it's...
But Ukraine not. They're not. But he is maybe a little bit more on the right than I am. But not because he did something. He's a very good Democrat. And for such Democrats, I could also vote. Also for a woman. But if everything is just about sex and abortion and illegal immigration, I'm not interested in it. But if it is about working people, about wages, about education, about peace talks, whatever, about United Nations, I can support that, but not this sex and drugs and whatever, This is private. In private lives, it's completely okay. You can also kill your baby if you insist, but it should not be a big cultural issue. So why should I be confronted with things, with that are not part of my life, you know.
Okay, so my last question for you, Matthias. Can the world be peaceful ever? Or it's just a simpleton way of thinking in a world of blood and power seeking human beings?
The answer is no.
Never.
To the answer to this question. And the question is good because that's one of the European illusions from the last centuries that, we had a lot of wars, but if we change here and there something, we will find a means to have a everlasting peace, at least on the European continent. For Europeans, it is very easy to develop such a notion to have an eternal peace in Europe, because then they simply go and attack the Africans, you know.
Yeah.
So they never make that connection, you know. They always, because they are so Eurocentric. That's my superior European race is so Eurocentric. They never think that maybe this would simply mean that this tiny little continent, Europe, is more united against, for instance, Central Africa, because they want to have uranium or whatever from there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was not discussed or included in this vision. So the vision was the entire world is at peace. But of course, this is what was written and said by philosophers or maybe by religious people, but it was always, the subtext was always, we are the best, we are the most beautiful, we are the most clever, everybody wants to be like us, and if they don't want to be like us, we will tell them to be like us. And so that concept of peace is a little bit strange. So it is peace in Europe and controlling everything around Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now the United States are not in this picture, but this is not a United States problem. This is the thought that is coming out of Europe. The United States is typically European, like Israel, also typically European. Everywhere where European people went, so Christians or Jews, Muslims not, because Muslims were only in Spain for some centuries. So it was Christians and Jewish people went out of Europe to go in different places in the world, also to Israel for different reasons. They all brought this hidden narrative or subtext with them. It doesn't depend. It's not even about the religion. It's about just very deep under the skin of a European that he or she is the best, the most beautiful, the best, the most beautiful, and shut up, you know. So that's very deep in European people, and so we should not blame the Americans too much or whatever, Australians, because they are also European.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you will also find that in ethnological research, that one tribe thinks that they are much more beautiful than another tribe, or that one other tribe in New Guinea thinks, they are much stronger and much more intelligent.
Yeah, we see this in apes too, this
Yes,
territorial
yes.
battle.
So I also, yes, exactly. I also don't want to say that Europeans invented that, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, because I cannot say that I do not come from Bangladesh, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm just a European. So it is my environment. These are the people and the background, the wider background of my place, my family, and so I'm uncomfortable because of that. But yes, please continue. What you want to say?
You are a positive pessimist, and you think there will never be peace in the world.
Peace. No, there will not be peace.
Yeah. So someone in the room has to be optimistic.
Yes,
so that's how we go forward.
Yes.
So let's hope at least there will be peace in shorter period of time, where people can live in peace and prosperity.
Yes,
and
of course.
Thank you a lot for coming here. We will do more episodes. I love to pick your brain. And yes, thanks again. Also, you can mention your Twitter handle, Facebook, where people can find your post ideology, your work
Yeah,
with politics.
it is more little comments that I'm adding to posts, or sometimes I'm writing a post myself, depending on what I have in mind or on the screen or whatever. So I have for sharing tweets or sharing Facebook posts or writing them myself, I have two accounts that they go together more or less. So I do not post the same on both accounts. It depends a little bit what it's about, and it is MC Rocco. So these are my two first names. The first name is like in the Bible. This would be from the old Jews. Matthias, the same. For the second name, Claudius. Claudius is also from the same time, but from the Romans. So I'm completely have a New Testament combination, Jews and Romans. So this MC, and Rocco is from Switzerland, the name, on Facebook and on X.
Okay.
And you can also find a short biography in the independent open Wikipedia, which is called Everybody Wiki. And it's always possible to contact me through your contacts or whatever, or indirectly through YouTube comments.
Yeah, sure. So
Thank you very much. Very good questions. Not easy to give simple answers because
we
everything.
are all on a learning curve here. So
Yes, yes.
yeah,
Me
episode
too.
by
I had to
episode.
learn a lot. I had to become more open for negative stories, which I was not when I was your age. I was very negative about negative people, but now I'm a little bit more distanced and more cool. I just try to have my own identity, my own world, but I have to accept that, as I said, there are 100,000 variants of human beings, and I'm not here to make a selection and to punish people for their opinions. Even if I despise them, I have to accept them.
Well said. On that note, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.